Ladies and gentlemen, pay close attention, because what you're about to hear could change everything you thought you knew. A powerful word from God before September 5th. You need to heed God's timing is perfect. And when we truly understand this truth, it changes the way we see life, struggles, and delays. Many times in life we become frustrated because things don't happen when we want them to. We pray, we work hard, we prepare, and yet the door we are knocking on seems to stay closed. It is in those seasons that doubt whispers, maybe it will never happen. Maybe you are not good enough. Maybe God has forgotten you. But the truth is, God is never late, and He is never early. His timing is precise, intentional, and always connected to a greater plan that we may not see right now. What seems like a delay to us is actually divine preparation. Imagine a farmer who plants a seed in the soil. No matter how much he waters it, he cannot demand that the seed grows into a tree overnight. The process of growth takes time, and in that hidden time beneath the soil, roots are being formed. Without roots, the plant cannot stand when the wind blows. In the same way, God allows seasons of waiting because He is developing roots in us, strengthening our character, deepening our faith, and preparing us to handle the blessings we are praying for. If we receive something too soon, before we are ready, what was meant to bless us could actually break us. That is why God's timing is not just perfect. It is protective. He withholds certain things until we are fully ready to carry the weight of them. When we look through the stories in Scripture, we see that everyone who walked in purpose had to wait on timing. Abraham was promised to be the father of many nations, yet he waited decades before holding the son of promise in his arms. Joseph dreamed of leadership and influence, but he endured betrayal, slavery, and prison before stepping into his palace assignment. David was anointed king as a boy, but he spent years tending sheep and fighting battles before he sat on the throne. What all of these examples show us is that God's promises are true, but His promises unfold in His timing. The waiting season is not a wasted season. It is the classroom where God trains, molds, and equips us for what is ahead. Sometimes we confuse speed with success. We want things quickly because we live in a world that values instant results. But divine destiny is not microwaved, it is cultivated. God is not interested in giving us temporary satisfaction at the expense of eternal purpose. He sees the whole picture from the beginning to the end, and He knows the exact moment when everything will align for His glory and for our good. When He says no or not yet, it is not rejection, it is preparation for something far greater than what we can imagine. Trusting God's timing requires faith and surrender. It means acknowledging that our understanding is limited, but His wisdom is limitless. It means refusing to panic when the calendar does not match our expectations, because the Creator of time itself cannot be late. Every delay has meaning. Every closed door has purpose. Every season of waiting is positioning us for something greater than we thought possible. And when the appointed time comes, things fall into place so smoothly that we realize why it could not have happened earlier. God's timing is never off. It is always on schedule, and when we learn to rest in that truth, peace replaces anxiety, patience replaces frustration, and hope replaces despair. Chaos is construction, and when we begin to see it that way, our perspective on life's struggles changes completely. Many times, when we look at our circumstances, everything feels scattered and broken. Pieces don't seem to fit together, and it appears as if our lives are spiraling out of control. The natural response is frustration and confusion, wondering why God would allow such disorder. But what looks like chaos to us is often God at work, rearranging and rebuilding our lives in ways we cannot yet see. Construction zones never look clean or beautiful while the work is being done. There is dust, noise, broken pieces, and structures that look unfinished. Yet every hammer, every nail, every brick has a purpose. In the same way, the chaos we face is not destruction. It is the process of construction. Think about a building site. If someone walks past in the middle of construction, they might say, "This looks like a mess." They see piles of materials scattered everywhere, holes dug into the ground, scaffolding set up, and wires sticking out. From the outside, it looks incomplete and confusing. But to the builder, every detail is part of the plan. The builder is not disturbed by the disorder because he knows the blueprint. He knows what is being built. The same is true with God. We see the mess, but He sees the masterpiece. We see chaos, but He sees construction. What feels like a breakdown in our lives may actually be the breakthrough being prepared. Chaos comes into our lives to dismantle what cannot remain. Sometimes God allows the shaking to remove what was never meant to stay. Just like old structures are torn down to make room for new ones, there are moments when God permits certain things to collapse so that stronger foundations can be laid. Relationships, jobs, plans, and even personal dreams that we thought were essential may fall apart, not because God has abandoned us, but because He is making space for something greater. Without the tearing down, the building up cannot begin. Without chaos, there can be no construction. It is in the seasons of disorder that God builds resilience and faith within us. Chaos teaches us to lean not on our own understanding, but to trust His plan. When everything is out of place, it forces us to anchor ourselves not in circumstances, but in the One who holds all things together. Often, the most beautiful transformations in our lives are born out of the most chaotic moments. A caterpillar looks like it is being destroyed when it enters the cocoon, wrapped in darkness and stillness. Yet, what appears as chaos is the very process that transforms it into a butterfly. Without that chaotic stage, there would be no wings, no flight, no beauty. We must understand that construction takes time. Just because things don't look finished today does not mean they won't be completed tomorrow. God never starts something He does not intend to finish. Every season of chaos is carefully designed to bring us to a place of growth, strength, and fulfillment. Instead of panicking in the mess, we must remind ourselves that there is a divine blueprint at work. God has already seen the end result, and what looks like a pile of broken pieces to us is the very material He is using to build something extraordinary. Chaos is not the end. It is evidence that God is at work, shaping, molding, and preparing us for what He has already designed. Breakthrough comes by alignment, not force. And this is a truth many people struggle to embrace. We often believe that if we push hard enough, if we strive long enough, if we manipulate situations with our own strength, then the door will eventually open. But real breakthrough is not achieved by human pressure. It is released through divine positioning. Alignment means coming into agreement with God's will, God's purpose, and God's timing. It means surrendering our own agendas and allowing His plan to take precedence over our desires. When we are aligned with Him, what seemed impossible becomes possible, what was closed begins to open, And what felt distant suddenly comes near without us forcing it. Forcing a breakthrough is exhausting because it makes us believe everything depends on us. We hustle, we stress, and we push only to end up drained when things don't move the way we want them to. Alignment, however, lifts that burden. When you align yourself with God's direction, you are not fighting against the current. You are flowing with it. It is like a ship sailing with the wind. A ship does not move by force, it moves by adjusting its sails to catch the wind's direction. In the same way, when we position our hearts and lives according to God's instructions, His Spirit becomes the wind that carries us forward, and the journey becomes smoother. One of the biggest lessons in life is realizing that success without alignment is fragile. You can fight your way into a position, manipulate your way into a relationship, or even pressure yourself into opportunities. But if those things are outside of God's will, they will not last. Forcing opens temporary doors, but alignment opens lasting ones. When a door is opened by force, you must keep forcing it to stay open. But when a door is opened by alignment, it remains secure because it is sustained by God Himself. This is why some people achieve what looks like success, but cannot keep it. They built it on striving instead of alignment. Alignment is not passive. It is an active choice to submit to God's process. It requires patience, discipline, and faith. It is refusing to take shortcuts, even when they look tempting. It is choosing obedience over convenience, trusting that the long way is often the lasting way. Take the example of Joseph in the Bible. He did not force his way into the palace. He was faithful in every stage of his journey, from the pit to Potiphar's house, from prison to the throne. At each stage, he aligned himself with integrity, excellence, and trust in God. And in due time, alignment positioned him in the exact place where God had destined him to be. His breakthrough came not because he fought his way into power, but because he aligned himself with purpose, and purpose brought him into power. When we learn this principle, life becomes less about control and more about surrender. Breakthrough is not a product of anxiety, but a fruit of alignment. Too often, people try to force relationships to work when clearly they are draining and destructive. Others try to force success in an area where God never called them to be, only to discover emptiness when they arrive. But when you align yourself with your true calling, with the gifts God placed inside of you, with the values of integrity and faithfulness, the right opportunities begin to chase you. You don't have to manipulate your way into a blessing. Blessings find their way to you when you are in alignment. This is why it is crucial to seek God's guidance before making decisions. Prayer, reflection, and discernment are keys to alignment. Asking, "Is this God's will or just my will?" saves us from years of frustration. It takes humility to pause and admit that our own wisdom is limited, but it also takes faith to trust that His wisdom is perfect. The moment you align your vision with His vision, you discover that the force you thought you needed is no longer necessary. Doors open on their own. Connections are made effortlessly, and opportunities present themselves without struggle. Alignment creates acceleration, but it is acceleration without striving. The truth is, breakthrough is not about pushing harder, it is about positioning correctly. The right key does not have to force the lock, it simply turns and opens. In the same way, when your life is in alignment with God's blueprint, things that once resisted you begin to yield. Circumstances shift, people respond, and resources flow because you are exactly where you are meant to be. The struggle fades not because life becomes easy, but because you are no longer fighting against the current of God's will. Breakthrough is not about making it happen. It is about being in the place where God has already made it happen. Faith over fear is a principle that has the power to transform the way we live, the way we think, and the way we respond to challenges. Fear is a natural emotion, one that every human being encounters. It rises when we face uncertainty, when life feels out of control, and when the future is unclear. Fear whispers doubts into our hearts, convincing us that we are not strong enough, not capable enough, and not prepared enough. But faith stands as the opposite voice, declaring that no matter what we see, no matter what we feel, and no matter how uncertain things may appear, God is greater, and His promises will prevail. Choosing faith over fear is not about denying the reality of our struggles, but about elevating our trust in the One who has power over every situation. Fear thrives on what is unknown. It magnifies what could go wrong and blinds us to what could go right. It paralyzes action and steals peace. Many people never step into their purpose because fear convinces them to stay safe, to stay small, to avoid risk. Faith, however, empowers us to move even when the path is not fully visible. It gives us the courage to step out onto waters that look unstable, believing that we will not sink because God is with us. Faith does not erase the presence of fear. It simply refuses to allow fear to dictate the outcome. Fear says, "What if you fail?" Faith responds, "What if this is the step that leads me to destiny?" Throughout history and Scripture, we see the battle between faith and fear played out. The Israelites, standing before the Red Sea, were consumed with fear as Pharaoh's army closed in on them. Their eyes saw danger, but faith saw deliverance. When Moses lifted his staff and the sea parted, it became clear that fear could not imprison them because faith had made a way. David stood before Goliath, a giant who instilled terror in the hearts of Israel's soldiers. Fear kept them frozen, but faith moved David forward with nothing but a sling and a stone. In both moments, victory came not because fear was absent, but because faith rose higher. In our own lives, fear often shows up in moments of transition and decision. It tells us not to start the business because we might fail, not to pursue the dream because we might be rejected, not to trust God because the outcome is uncertain. But faith reminds us that failure is not the end, rejection is not our identity, and uncertainty is not defeat. Faith anchors us in the unshakable truth that God is with us. And if He is with us, then no challenge, no setback, and no storm can overcome us. Fear shrinks possibilities, but faith expands them. Fear keeps us chained, but faith sets us free to walk boldly into what has been promised. One of the greatest strengths of faith is its ability to create peace in the midst of storms. Fear causes panic when circumstances seem out of control, but faith assures us that even when we cannot control the situation, God is still in control. It gives us rest when the world expects us to break down, and it gives us courage when others choose to retreat. Faith speaks to our hearts, reminding us that mountains move not by our might, but by the power of God. Fear tries to magnify the size of the mountain, but faith magnifies the strength of the one who can move it. Living by faith over fear does not mean life will always be easy, but it does mean we will always be empowered. Every battle we face becomes an opportunity to choose faith. Every decision becomes a chance to silence fear and step into trust. Over time, faith builds resilience, courage, and vision. It teaches us to stop letting fear write our story and instead allow God to direct our path. Fear may knock on the door of our hearts daily, but we do not have to let it in. We can choose to answer with faith, reminding ourselves that we walk by faith and not by sight, and that as long as faith leads, fear will never win. Trust the unseen plan is one of the hardest yet most rewarding lessons in life. Human nature longs for clarity, certainty, and control. We want to see the path ahead, understand every detail, and know exactly how things will work out. But life rarely unfolds in such a way. Instead, we are often asked to walk into seasons where nothing makes sense, where doors close unexpectedly, and where we are left with questions that seem to have no answers. It is in those moments that trust becomes essential. Trusting the unseen plan means believing that even when we cannot see the full picture, God already has the blueprint. It is knowing that behind the confusion, behind the waiting, and behind the setbacks, a greater purpose is unfolding. When we look at our lives, the temptation is to measure progress by what is visible. If we see open doors, we feel successful. If we see closed ones, we feel like failures. But the unseen plan of God is not built on what we see in the moment. It is built on what He has declared from the beginning. He knows the end from the start, and every step in between has already been factored into His design. Trusting the unseen plan requires us to release the need for immediate answers and embrace the truth that His wisdom is higher than ours. We see the moment, but He sees eternity. We see the surface, but He sees the depths. There are countless examples of how unseen plans eventually reveal themselves in powerful ways. Joseph could not understand why he was betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, and thrown into prison. From his perspective, his life looked broken and unfair. But years later, when he was elevated to a position of influence in Egypt and able to save his family during famine, the plan became clear. What seemed like random pain was actually intentional preparation. The unseen plan was working all along, even when Joseph could not recognize it. This same principle applies to us. The disappointments and delays that seem meaningless today may be the very stepping stones that lead us into the purpose we were created for. Trusting the unseen plan also means refusing to let setbacks define the end of our story. Often we assume that when things go wrong, it must mean that God's plan has failed. But the unseen plan accounts for every twist and turn. Even the mistakes we make and the challenges we face can be woven into the larger picture of purpose. Nothing is wasted. Every tear, every struggle, every closed chapter becomes material in the hands of a God who specializes in turning all things for good. What looks like the end is often just the beginning of something greater. The unseen plan also develops character in us. If everything was clear and predictable, faith would not be necessary. But trust is built when we continue moving forward without having all the answers. Just as a child trusts a parent to guide them safely across a busy street without questioning every step, we are called to trust God with the steps of our journey. This kind of trust strengthens us, humbles us, and anchors us. It reminds us that our security does not come from knowing the future, but from knowing the one who holds it. Sometimes the unseen plan requires waiting, and waiting is never easy. It tests patience, challenges faith, and confronts our desire for control. But waiting is not wasted when it is in God's hands. During the unseen seasons, growth is taking place within us. We are being prepared for what is ahead, stretched beyond our comfort zones, and refined in ways we do not even recognize at the moment. Later, when the plan unfolds, we will look back and realize why the waiting was necessary. Trusting the unseen plan calls us to live with hope rather than despair, with peace rather than panic, and with faith rather than fear. It is choosing to believe that the author of our story is still writing, even when we cannot read the next chapter. It is reminding ourselves daily that the plan is not unseen because it does not exist. It is unseen because it is still unfolding. And in time, as pieces come together, we will understand what today seems impossible to grasp. Until then, we trust, we walk by faith, and we hold on to the truth that His unseen plan is always for our good and His glory. Everything will fall into place is more than just a phrase of comfort. It is a declaration of faith in the order and timing of God. Life is often filled with seasons where nothing seems to make sense, where the pieces of our lives feel scattered and disconnected. We wonder why certain doors close, why opportunities slip through our hands, or why we face obstacles that appear insurmountable. In those moments, it is easy to believe that life is random and meaningless. But the truth is that nothing is wasted in the hands of God, and every piece has a purpose. Though we may not see the bigger picture, everything is moving toward alignment, and in due season, the scattered fragments come together perfectly. When we consider how the universe itself functions, we see evidence of divine order. The sun rises and sets without fail. The seasons change at their appointed times. The stars remain in place, each one guided by unseen laws. If God can hold the galaxies together with such precision, then surely He can hold our lives together as well. The chaos we see today does not mean there is no plan. It means the plan is still unfolding. Everything that feels uncertain right now is not the final chapter. The author is still writing, and when he is finished, the story will reveal purpose behind every detail. We often become impatient in the process, trying to force things to happen before their time. We want the promotion now, the relationship now, the breakthrough now. Yet, when things happen prematurely, they rarely last. Just as fruit picked before its season lacks sweetness, blessings received outside of God's timing lack fulfillment. Waiting is not punishment, it is preparation. During the waiting, we are being shaped, refined, and made ready for what is ahead. Trusting that everything will fall into place means embracing patience, knowing that when the right time comes, nothing and no one will be able to stop what God has ordained. There are countless examples of this truth in the lives of those who fulfilled their destiny through patience and trust. David was anointed king as a young shepherd boy, but he spent years in obscurity before he sat on the throne. At times, his life seemed to be moving backward rather than forward, yet every season was shaping him into the leader God intended him to be. Joseph dreamed of greatness, but before his dream was realized, he endured betrayal, slavery, and prison. None of it made sense at the time, but when he eventually stood in the palace and saved nations from famine, he saw how every event had been a piece of the larger puzzle. In both cases, the path was not straight, but everything still fell into place. For us, the same principle applies. What feels like a setback today may actually be a setup for something greater tomorrow. The disappointment that broke your heart may have been necessary to position you for a better opportunity. The delay that frustrated you may have been protecting you from stepping into something you were not ready for. Every unanswered prayer, every closed door, every detour is part of the construction that leads to completion. Nothing is random when it is surrendered to God. He is weaving together every thread, even the painful ones, to create a masterpiece. Believing that everything will fall into place also shifts the way we handle challenges. Instead of panicking in times of uncertainty, we can rest in assurance that God is still in control. Instead of allowing fear to consume us, we can choose peace, knowing that the one who holds time also holds our future. This perspective does not eliminate hardship, but it gives us the strength to endure it. When we know that all things work together for good, then even the darkest moments become bearable because they are part of a greater light that is yet to be revealed. Ultimately, the promise that everything will fall into place calls us to live with hope. Hope that what seems broken will be restored. Hope that what seems delayed will arrive right on time. Hope that what seems meaningless will one day reveal purpose. Hope keeps us moving forward, even when the road is long and uncertain. And when the appointed time comes, when the pieces finally come together, we will look back and realize that nothing was wasted, nothing was random, and everything had to happen exactly as it did so that everything could fall into place.